Well, we've actually had this trip planned for about 4 months.
This Tampa mom on our flight to Havana has turned her family trip into a history lesson.
You know, I said, PJ, you were going to witness something that is just phenomenal.
Secretary of State John Kerry will lead the U.S. delegation to what is being called a small government-to-government event. Left out, anti-Castro dissidents.
He might as well be raising the white flag of surrender.
Kerry will meet these dissidents at a separate event. But what will happen outside the embassy gates? This young Cuban, trying Wi-Fi for the first time at new pay-per-hour hotspots, plans to wave an American flag. Something he claims would land you in jail not long ago. Despite the changes, he hopes to leave Cuba for the U.S., uncertain about what's to come. His friend, checking out WFLA.com while in Havana, thinks differently.
It's a new opportunity to the Cuban people.
Hello from Havana. The same thing Secretary of State John Kerry did today, displaying the American flag like so many Cubans are now doing here in the streets of Havana. Not long ago, I'm being told, could land you in prison. And some are concerned that maybe after today, when the cameras disappear, they won't be so free to do this. The 3 Marines that brought down the flag in 1961 had a front row seat. Secretary of State John Kerry doing what has landed many Cubans in jail, flying the American flag. Friday, Cubans flew Old Glory, facing their fears. My mom told me not to bring it, says this Cuban woman, her flag smuggled in by a friend, adding you can't buy one in Cuba. She's been hiding it in her room. This other flag brought from a friend in Colombia. For me, it's symbolic and important, says its owner, flying it attached to an umbrella. Freedom of speech isn't guaranteed in Cuba. When the cameras go away, they don't know what will happen. This young man claims he doesn't expect improvement. And an interesting fact here, right across the street from the embassy, these flagpoles once carried black flags covering pro-democracy messages that were broadcast from the U.S. Embassy. It'd be curious to see what happens with these flagpoles now that the biggest symbol of democracy, the American flag, flies in front of the building. We'll have more coming up in the next hour. For now, reporting from Havana, Cuba, I'm Gene Ramirez. Back to you.
We want to show you a live picture of the flag flying over the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba. It marks the official reopening of that embassy.
News Channel 8's Gene Ramirez is there tonight. He witnessed the historic moment this morning.
Hello from Havana, where the U.S. flag now flies for the first time since 1961. Outside the embassy gates, people standing shoulder to shoulder wherever they can find a spot to witness this historic occasion. A symbol of democracy flies over Havana, Cuba. The American flag waving at the U.S. Embassy for the first time since 1961. Secretary of State John Kerry, the first top American diplomat on Cuban soil since 1945.
This doesn't mean that we should or will forget the past. How could we, after all?
Cubans and visiting Americans side by side, outside the gates, waving American flags.
It's about time. I mean, there should be peace in the country.
The most hopeful, Cuban youth wanting a better tomorrow. But some don't think they'll find it in Cuba. Many will return to the U.S. Embassy for visas. But this man tells me Cubans need to stay home and fight for better lives.
Gene Ramirez is there, and he witnessed the historic moment.
Hey there, Jen. What a day here in Havana. Such a proud occasion for many Cuban Americans who were here. Also for Cubans who are really talking about hope. That seems to be the word I keep hearing here. Today, for the first time since 1961, the U.S. flag flew in an official capacity here at the U.S. Embassy. Secretary of State John Kerry, the first person with that title to visit Cuba since 1945. But still, many are asking themselves, what exactly does all this mean?
A lot of mixed feelings, I have to say.
It's how many feel about restoring relations. The most visible sign, the flying of the American flag at the U.S. Embassy in Havana. Americans present, reflected on the past, looking towards the future.
Being from Key West, Florida, and knowing that we had missiles pointed at us and that I might not have been here today, it's really, really important that we be friends.
The Cuban people I spoke with agree, hoping for a better life.
We want freedom. We want human rights.
Felix Lopez says those who disagree with the Cuban government are still routinely beaten or arrested. That's normal, adds his friend, waving Old Glory, a once punishable offense. Secretary of State John Kerry told the crowd the past is not forgotten, and the U.S. will continue to fight for human rights in Cuba.
It's a great day, really.
Well, Secretary Kerry was here just for a few short hours, but he had a jam-packed schedule. After that event, he met with the Cuban foreign minister, also met with some dissidents, and then he toured Old Havana. That's the area that I'm at right now. I'm going to give you a closer look coming up in just a bit, Jen.
Well, Gene, we often hear about those dissidents asking for human rights in Cuba. What role did they play in today's events?
It's such an interesting topic, really. It dominated the pre-event coverage of this historic occasion. Why were those dissidents not invited to the official ceremony of the raising of the American flag? Well, the U.S. government says that was always intended to be a small government-to-government event, so they really had no place there. Instead, Secretary Kerry met with those dissidents at the home of the chief of mission here, Jeff De Laurentiis, and we'll see what happens with those talks as the U.S. Says they will continue to fight and advocate for human rights here for the Cuban people.
Interesting stuff. Gene, I know we're going to talk with you again in just a little bit. Gene Ramirez for us tonight in Havana, Cuba. Thank you.
It's a nice city with nice people. I like it.
Young Floridian Andy Gonzalez toured Old Havana Friday for the first time. A few hours earlier, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry did the same exact thing. His tour guide, Havana's city historian. Andy's his buddy Renee.
Yeah, I live in Florida, but I come here to visit family.
Renee's family doesn't live in touristy Old Havana, where building facades have been repaired. Gleaming classic cars are at the ready, and music fills the streets. They live where the U.S. delegation did not go.
I just think they should have showed more of the poor areas too.
All in good time.
This other visiting American believes it's a good start. After all, Kerry is the first U.S. Secretary of State to visit Cuba since 1945.
Secretary Kerry has done extraordinary things in a very short period of time that have taken decades to arrive at. And so if he failed to see a few neighborhoods on this visit, I'm sure he will get to it.
If you want to see more of Gene's journey to Cuba, he has a blog on WFLA.com. You can also find him on Facebook and Twitter and see some of his pictures, including this one. This is Gene with NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt. He's also in Cuba covering the U.S. Embassy opening.